Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm so glad you're here today to learn about DNA in the brain. And I'm sure you've all heard someone mention genetics or DNA before, but what exactly is DNA? Well, our bodies are made up of hundreds of different types of cells, these little small units that all have a special job to do. These cells can work together to create organs like our brains or our hearts. Cells remind us to drink when we need water. They break down food so we have energy to move, and so many other important functions. And the coolest part is that cells know exactly what to make and do because of DNA. It's like a recipe book or instructions for everything our cells need to help us survive. Almost every cell has a copy of this recipe book or DNA safely within the walls of their nucleus, a small compartment inside the cell. Your recipe book was given to you by your biological parents, and they got their recipe book from their parents. So we all have slightly different versions of the same recipes, and this is what gives us so much diversity. Just like some families make certain food dishes a little different than others based on their family recipe. And something important to know is that when the cell needs to make a recipe, a copy of that recipe is made from the giant recipe book. And this is because the cells don't want their recipe book to be damaged or any recipes to be lost. For example, if a cake recipe was damaged by water and you couldn't read it anymore, you might think it said salt when it said sugar. And now your cake won't taste sweet, but salty, and it's totally wrong. And in a cell when this happens, it's called a mutation. The DNA recipe is changed and it can result in something wrong, which can be a bad thing. And so to be safe, the cell makes a copy of the recipe called RNA. Then the RNA can leave the nucleus where the rest of the cell can use it to make the recipe. And the recipe usually makes a protein that's important for carrying out the function of the cell. But let's stay focused on how cool DNA is. Many living things also have their own DNA recipe books that are different from ours. For example, strawberries. Strawberry DNA has recipes that make them small, red, have seeds on the outside, and taste the way they do. Yet they're so different from humans. So why don't we go see what my friends are up to? They're going to show you how to isolate some strawberry DNA from home. And this is something we do in the lab often so we can understand more about the function of certain cells that we're studying.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that lovely introduction. My name is Edward Viscara. I am a fourth-year biomedical science student, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to extract DNA from strawberries. So if you're watching at home, you're going to need a couple of things. So go ahead and pause this video and grab what you need. So first things first, you're going to need your strawberry. So pretend this strawberry is like your brain. Both have millions of cells and each one is filled with tons of DNA. You're going to need a bag to go ahead to help out with the extraction process. And then you're going to need some materials to actually help out with taking out the DNA. So we have a beaker that we're going to put everything in. We're going to have some dish soap, some water, some regular table salts, some rubbing alcohol that we've actually pre-cooled before, coffee filter, a funnel. If you don't have one, that's okay. It just helps to prevent a mess. A collection flask, and what we're actually going to perform the actual extraction. So, first things first, let's make the extraction reagent. So what I'm going to do is put about 90 mils of water in here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and fill this up to about the 100 mark. So add an additional 10 mils of dish soap. And then you don't need a whole lot of salt. You only need a pinch. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in. And then I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up really quick. And now I'm gonna go ahead and combine the two, my extraction solution and the strawberry. So you don't need to pour all of it in, just enough. So I'm gonna shake this up a little bit more. And you can pour about maybe 50 mils or about half the bottle. That should be more than enough. And then now what I'm going to do is mash up the strawberry. So you want to do a really good job at mashing this up because you want to expose every cell as possible. And so what's happening here is the soap is actually breaking up the cell membrane of the cells that are present, as well as the nucleus where the DNA is stored within the cell. And then the salt is going to come later, what's going to actually help bring out the DNA, but we're not quite there yet. And then the water is just there to help put the DNA into solution. So you really want to match this up good. I have lots of big chunks still, so it's going to take me a second. Okay, I think we're good. I feel like the majority of this is in solution, and we're good. Oops. And so now we're going to want to filter some of those chunks out, and what we're really left with in solution is our DNA. So go ahead and put the coffee filter inside the funnel, and then just slowly add this in. You don't want to overfill it, or you're going to take the risk of spilling it. So it's going to take a quick second to really filter out everything. So, while we're waiting, I can go ahead and give you a couple of key facts. So, have you guys ever wondered why strawberries are red? It's actually because of a type of antioxidant called an anthocyanin. And it's actually found not just in strawberries, but all berries. It gives the berries that red, blue, purple color. In a strawberry, you actually have about 2 million cells, but in a brain, you have over 100 billion. Rebecca, are there any other facts that you want to share with our audience?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, we're almost there. We're getting there.
It looks pretty good.
I'm just going to squeeze the last of this out. And then the last fact I'll share with you guys is, so humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So we get the pairs from our parents, but interestingly with strawberries, they actually have 56 chromosomes. And it comes from, they have 7 different ones, but each of those has 4 of the same copies, making it 56. Crazy. Versus us, where it's 46 total. All right, I think that's pretty good. So now what I'm gonna do is all of the solution that's left, I'm actually gonna pour into a different flask just to make my life easier. And now what we wanna do is precipitate the DNA out, or make it into a solid so we can actually see it. And so what we're gonna do now is utilize the rubbing alcohol. So we'll go ahead and pour in a couple of mils, and let's see how this reaction goes. And so basically what's happening here is the ethanol is causing the sodium ion, which is positively charged, to interact with DNA, which is negatively charged, and that is going to form it into a salt. And so it looks like we actually have quite a bit of DNA that we're extracting here.
15 minutes later.
So we let the reaction go a little bit longer in the cold, and that's going to help precipitate more of the DNA. So you can see here, basically all of this top part is DNA. And so if you look inside, you can actually see some of it starting to clump. If you have a Q-tip at home, you might actually be able to pull some of this out, but the current stuff that we have right now, we're not able to. But you can actually see a lot of this still on the side. That's how you extract DNA right at home. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Just to recap, DNA is the recipe book. RNA is a copy of the recipe, and the recipe is usually protein. And different cells make different recipes. Here are some actual images of cells in the brain making different recipes. Every different color here represents a different recipe made by these different cell types in the brain. These pictures of actual brains are so cool, and they just go to show how complicated and beautiful the brain is. We're glad you came today. Thank you for learning with us.